Conversations across time. 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 Conversations across time.
Good evening. Welcome to Conversations Across Time. I'm joined by our show historian, Mark Hoffman. Mark.
It's good to be here, but under these perilous times.
Under these perilous times. And one of the things that I want to share with the audience, as our regular viewers know, what is going on now are discussions that we've had from the very beginning.
Yes.
We've been doing this show now since 2013. Since 2013.
Absolutely. And since Trump has come on the political market, and we're going back to when he was doing his birther thing.
Yes.
We warned the country, unfortunately, of what kind of man he was and what he would do if he were, by some chance, elected to the office of the presidency. We did shows early on about why the German people supported Hitler.
Yes.
And we compared it to some of the things Trump said and some of the things Trump would do. We did shows early on about separation of power, and Abigail Adams, I believe, said she would invite Trump to Philadelphia and she would teach him about the Constitution.
Yes.
And unfortunately, and I wish that our predictions were wrong and we lost to the bookies, all our money, and he was a better president than he is.
It just hasn't happened. There are many people that thought that Trump would rise, the office of the presidency would make him measure up to the standard of the presidency. It just has not happened.
Not only that, it not only has he not measured up, he lowered everybody else.
Yes.
So, there's an old saying, you lay down with dogs, you get fleas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they laid down with him and they all got fleas.
And that's exactly what the Republican Party is doing today.
Yes.
They are laying down with this man. I want to start with a quote. The two enemies of the people are criminals and government. So let us tie the second down with the chains of the Constitution so that the second will not become the legalized version of the first. Thomas Jefferson. This is a great departure point. This is a great point for us to start from, because this show will be aired later, but this is the second day of the impeachment trial, the impeachment sham trial of the current president, Donald J. Trump. And he has violated some basic tenets of what the founding fathers had envisioned for this country, for this republic. So I'd like you, Mark, to give some explanation of separation of powers.
So the quote you gave from Jefferson is really important, because Jefferson believed in a totally unlimited government. That was one of his biggest philosophies. For him, what he was saying, though, is that if you don't have a constitution and you don't have a rule of law, you just have criminality on all fronts. And what Trump has done, and the people use the term, he's broken the norms, he doesn't.
Yes.
But what he's really done is started to erode the basic premises that we have in the Constitution: separation of power and checks and balances. And part of this impeachment right now,
Yes.
and let me just explain quickly what separation
Absolutely.
of power is.
Absolutely.
That each branch of government would have a specific job to do. The president enforces the law, the legislator, Congress, the Senate, and the House make the law, and the Supreme Court interprets or says what the law is. And the founding fathers, Madison and especially Madison and Hamilton, but also John Jay, a little bit of Jefferson, they understood it just couldn't be separate, so there had to be an inner working between the two branches. So not only did they have a separation of power, but they said they have to cooperate, but they also have to have the ability to check each other. So part of Congress's ability to check the president is impeachment and conviction,
Yes.
which is a deterrent. Everybody's arguing he didn't commit a crime, he didn't do this. Part of the reason impeachment is in the Constitution is a check on the power of the president And part of the reason that it's important because it can act as a deterrent. You don't have to use it. We have many laws and things that say the death penalty, for example, it's supposed to be a deterrent. We don't expect people to do it and always be tried for murder. It's supposed to act as a deterrent. So when a president sees the Constitution, which I don't think our president ever read, that they would know that if they abuse their power, they can be impeached. By the same token, he can veto laws of Congress, and they can override the veto, and the Supreme Court that can declare laws.
But the idea was to put things in place so that there was a balance.
Exactly, and that's exactly what Madison said. There had to be a balance. There had to be the checks and balances and separation of powers, so that they all knew that, and they were the thing. And I think other people have said this. The thing that amazes a lot of people that study history, that the founding fathers anticipated a Trump. They anticipated someone elected president who would try to abuse the power. I think they would be surprised that it took so long for it to evolve into a Trump.
That it took this many years for us to end up with a person, and a totally amoral person in the office of the presidency.
Right, so, and he is violated, and that's one of the reasons he's being impeached, because one of the powers of Congress is oversight, and to look at what the executive branch is doing, and to make sure they're not breaking the law, to make sure they're not abusing their power. And he has stopped the Congress, or tried to stop the Congress from being able to use its oversight power to check the president.
Which is one of the charges of the impeachment.
Exactly,
is obstruction.
obstruction of Congress.
And this is something that when I hear Alan Dershowitz, for instance.
Well, I have a different name for him, but go ahead.
No, I mean, I think your name is appropriate.
Yeah, Dersh the douche.
Yes. When you hear someone like Dershowitz, who former professor at Harvard, so he stands up and pontificates that Trump could not, that we don't have grounds for impeachment because he didn't commit a crime.
He's so wrong, and I'm not a lawyer, and I didn't go to Harvard Law School, nor did I teach law at Harvard. But I do know a little bit about English common law, which is what our impeachment is based on.
Yes.
And English common law didn't say you had to break a crime to be commit a crime to be impeached. All you needed to do to be impeached, and England had a lot of impeachments, was to, it's defined in English malfeasance of administration.
Yes.
It doesn't, and the founding fathers talked about that. Mm-hmm. The founding fathers did not. There were no federal laws. Don't forget, when they were writing the Constitution, we had the Articles of Confederation, so there weren't federal laws. So for Dershowitz to come up and say, well, he didn't break any federal law that was in the Constitution, therefore he shouldn't be impeached, is so bogus, and it's the most fallacious argument I ever heard. And for a bright guy who taught constitutional law and law at Harvard Law School, they should take his degree away from him.
I think that there is something that happens, and I'm trying to think of the authors of the book that said everything that Trump touches dies.
Yeah, that's it. But I think he was a former Republican congressman. Yes.
And this is exactly what we are witnessing with this man. But the people that follow him.
Ken Starr, who's also one of his attorneys, right, said opposite things when Clinton was being impeached. And what was Clinton being impeached for? They'd say that Trump didn't commit a crime. The only thing they could charge Clinton would be obstruction of Congress and perjury because he lied in the grand jury. But what did he do? Trump tried to fix an election, the next election.
Yes.
Withheld arms from a country at war with what's supposed to be our adversary. Of course, Putin is his buddy. And what did Clinton do? He lied about
extramarital.
And Ken Starr was so fixated on the sexual aspect of it. And he made sure that all the, and I don't want to go into all the gory sexual stuff on the show. He made sure all the gory,
all the prurient information came out.
Right. And so there besides his other, there was two attorneys.
Yes, and the problem with the Clinton impeachment and the allegations in terms of his wrongdoing. I'm saying this, and I am a female. I'm a woman, but I have to say this: what person do you know? What married man do we know that is going to admit to the world that he had an extramarital relationship? Who doesn't understand him lying about that? Who's confused?
Trump has lied in like what they say 15,000 times
Yes.
already. I mean, I think that it would be really great if they said every time he tells the truth, we'll put him on television. But when he lies, we won't put him on television. He would never get any free TV time.
That's right. That's right. And the fixation that the Republican Party seems to have with matters having to do with one's private life is very disheartening to me. And I don't understand what their problem is. I mean, they have issues with who people love in terms of LGBTQ communities. I mean, they are obsessed with that. They're obsessed with who wants to terminate a pregnancy. There's so many things that they get involved in, and they've got this creature in the White House who would send us off to war. Is sending us off to war.
It would send us off to war, and their whole theory, at least that they come up, and he's too dumb to have a theory, so he just parrots their theory. It's this idea of what they call the unitary president.
Yes, talk about that,
the president
please.
has all power. So when Trump goes on television or in an interview and he says, Article 2 allows me to do this. Article 2 gives me all power. That's total BS. That's the whole point of checks and balances. But
Article 1, the legislature.
Right, and that's
Article 2,
the executive.
Article 3, the judiciary.
Exactly.
Article 2 is not better than Article 1.
What I truly believe that the founders put them in the order they wanted them in.
Exactly.
Put one was the legislators because they believed that was the will of the people.
Sure.
And then number 2 was the executive because they needed an executive. They tried to govern the country without the executive under the Articles of Confederation.
Yes.
And number 3 was the courts, and that's and they believed that the House would be the total representative of the people. The Senate would be, like somebody once said, the saucer to call the hot tea, and that the executive would be under their control. And that's basically what they thought. They wanted a very limited power. Now it changed. You know, in when we got involved in war and the Cold War.
In world wars, that's one of the things that changed.
Right, and so now there's people that believe, especially the Attorney General or Trump's personal lawyer, William Barr, who believes in the unitary president, that the president would have all power. And we see this happening all the time, where Congress will pass a law that deals with the limitation of dumping wastewater in streams, and he'll just tell the EPA not to enforce it.
Yes.
So this is where we're at, and in my opinion, if impeachment doesn't work and he's not convicted, which it looks like it's already
the Senate. Well, McConnell's already declared he's made up his mind.
It's already a fixed race.
Yes.
Ben Franklin said something very interesting about impeachment. When they were debating whether to put an impeachment clause in the Constitution, they asked Franklin what he thought about it, and he wasn't too enamored, because what they were afraid of is that the executive would be beholden politically to the president. Remember, there were no term limits then.
Yes.
Term limits were only like after Washington a formality, but it wasn't.
But it wasn't codified.
It wasn't a constitution. So they felt that if a president wanted to keep on running, that the threat of impeachment will cause him to, kiss the rear end of Congress to be on their good side. So they were debating it back and forth, and they asked Ben Franklin what he thought about it. He says, "I'm not too crazy about the concept of impeachment, but it's a lot better than the alternative." And they said, "Mr. Franklin, what's the alternative?" And he said, assassination. And he talked about that's how they got rid of tyrannical leaders in Europe. They assassinated them. So So that's why we have it. We have it as a deterrent, so that the chief executive knows it can happen, and we have it as a means of getting rid of or removing a tyrannical leader.
And the interesting thing about impeachment, Donald Trump is impeached.
Yes.
This is what
Yeah.
there seems to be some confusion in the media about
Yeah.
this. The impeachment is the equivalent of bringing an indictment.
Yes.
So he is indicted. He has actually, for want of a better term, and comparing it to a criminal procedure, but he is impeached. That's not going to change. He's impeached for history. In perpetuity, he is impeached. Now, whether or not the Senate votes in the trial aspect to remove him from office, that has never been done. But it's never been done because Richard Nixon had the good sense and the respect, because Richard Nixon, no matter what you think of him, was an intelligent man. And Richard Nixon had the good sense when he was approached by that group of Republican lawmakers, led by Barry Goldwater, by the way, who said to him, this is what is happening, and encouraged him to resign. And he did that because he loved this country. I don't think Trump loves this country. I think Trump only has love for himself. He has no interest in this country. So that when you examine it from that standpoint, Trump, you are impeached. You are forever impeached.
Yeah.
History records you as being impeached.
There are 3 presidents who have been impeached: Andrew Johnson,
Yes.
Bill Clinton, and Trump. Johnson was acquitted,
Yes.
and Clinton was acquitted, and Trump will probably be acquitted. But being acquitted, and you're a lawyer,
Yes.
doesn't mean you're not guilty.
Doesn't mean that you don't have a criminal record.
And it doesn't mean that you're not
Exactly.
guilty. That means there wasn't enough evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to convict you. That doesn't mean you're not guilty. I mean, what the
It
Senate...
doesn't mean you didn't do what you were accused of doing.
Exactly. Like what the Senate said in Andrew Johnson, one of the things, and it's similar to what Trump's doing, is Johnson refused to enforce an act passed by Congress called the Tenure of Office Act. They said they couldn't fire cabinet officials,
Yes.
and he said he couldn't. He kept firing them. So later, when I was declared unconstitutional, but he still, at the time, he should have.
He should have obeyed the act.
Right.
That was the law.
So he still did it. There's
Yes.
no doubt that he disobeyed the Tenure of Office Act. He just, they said it doesn't rise to a level of us convicting him. The same with Clinton. We know he lied before a grand jury because he later admitted it.
Yes.
And we know he had the relationship with Monica Lewinsky, but they said it doesn't rise to the standard of impeachment. What the Republicans are doing now, though, they refuse to say that. They refuse to say what Trump did is wrong, that by offering to extort, that's the word I'll use.
It was extortion.
To extort the President Zelensky of the Ukraine, that he committed a crime. Now, they could say that doesn't rise to the level of impeachment. I would disagree with them. They don't even want to, because Trump won't let them admit that he admitted. He keeps saying, that's a perfect...
It was a perfect telephone call.
Perfect telephone call. Perfect.
It's a perfect telephone call if you're a criminal. You know, I mean, the thing that happens with him extorting, this was at the time when Ukraine, which is our ally, was in a state of war with Russia. And so the withholding of funds and the withholding of armaments from Ukraine at a time of war, that is something that is so extreme. This, whatever you think about Clinton, whatever you think about Johnson, whatever you think about Nixon, pales. This just pales in comparison. We are looking at a man who, I don't know how many Ukrainians died during that time that he was holding up the funds. And by the way, there has been corroboration that this is what happened. There's been corroboration that the Office of OMBD did not know what was going on.
Nobody can deny it happened. Nobody.
Right.
Nobody can deny it. So they're saying, so what? Or he has the power to do that. Or he was trying to root out corruption. The thing is, all presidents try to be powerful. They FDR tried to pack the
Supreme Court.
But the thing that I noticed in going over like the attempt of presidents to accrue more power in the executive branch is 2 things. Number one, most of the presidents still had a moral compass. They still believed in the Constitution.
Absolutely.
They still believed in. He doesn't. So that's what's dangerous
Well, he
about
doesn't
it.
even know what the Constitution means.
Exactly. And the second thing, the people, our elected representatives in the legislature, had, I'll use the word guts, I was going to use another word, but had the guts to stand up. So when Roosevelt tried to pack the Supreme Court,
Yes.
Democrats voted against it as well as Republicans.
Because they love the republic. They want to, what
Exactly.
this country stands
As
for
you,
meant something
as
to
you
them.
stated before, when Nixon was shown that the tapes proved him to be, guilty,
Yes.
you, Scott, and Goldwater went to him. They were Republicans.
Yes.
We don't have that now, and that, to me, that's the danger. No one can tell me that Susan Collins or
Corey.
Corey or
I mean,
Marco
Gardner.
Rubio
Yes. Yes.
don't know what's going on.
Or Cruz. These people, they know.
Right.
They know.
Listen, Cruz is not going to stand up. He wouldn't even defend his own
His
wife
own-
and mother,
or his father.
wife, his father against Trump. I mean,
Yes.
he's not going to. I
Yes.
call him Senator Eunuch.
Okay, you're right. You're
No,
right.
no, seriously. Listen. There's people watching this show. Any man watching this show, somebody attacked your wife and called her ugly,
Yes.
and attacked your father. You would have no time for him. You'd probably punch him out. This man is further up Trump's behind than he was before. To me, he'll never stand up to the man. That's why I call him Senator Eunuch.
And we don't, and we have these. I think Susan Collins is going to rue the day. I mean, rue the day that she just didn't stand up. And what bothers me is that she just seems to, she takes one step forward and two steps backwards. She is so solicitous.
Yeah. See, the only time in American history I can really relate this to is the Civil War and the people that defended slavery.
Okay, all right.
And nobody in their right mind can really think slavery is right.
Yes. No one could think that that was okay.
Right, so they have to rationalize all these reasons, and
Yes.
it's better for the country, it's better for the economy, whatever. The South
Surely.
economy will fall apart, and nobody stands up for what's right or wrong. I have people tell me, "Well, Trump's this and that, but the stock market's booming." And as you know, and I know, they said the same thing about Hitler, and Countess Berchtold said it on the show. When you
Yes.
ask her, "Why did you support Hitler?" Well, he put everybody back to work. He built the roads.
He built the Autobahn.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody had a Volkswagen.
Exactly.
We were starving before, and you're exactly right. Countess Berchtold explained just how the aristocracy of Germany allowed Hitler to come to power. But of course, they thought they could control him. That was one thing that she said that I found most interesting, that the aristocrats thought that they were going to be able to control Trump. He was going to protect, I'm sorry, that was a Freudian slip to call Trump Hitler. But at any rate, they felt that they could control Hitler. And this is what a lot of people felt about Trump. They knew that the man, when Tillerson called him that name, when Tillerson said that the man was a bleeping moron, it was exactly on point. Everyone in the room knew when he said it that he was speaking accurately. But at the same time, they felt, well, we'll put him in office because we can control him. We'll pack the federal courts, which is what's happened. They've been able to get through. They've got how many judges now through the federal judiciary that have been appointed?
At least 150.
Yes. 150 judges in the federal court system is going to change the way that we look at law for generations. And they felt that he was their perfect weapon to do that. And they knew he was an idiot.
People get criticized, and I've been criticized, and I'm sure you've been criticized for trying to compare Trumpism with Nazism. I get criticized, and people say don't do it. But one of the things Hitler was able to do, besides get the legislature, the Reichstag to cow down to him, was to corrupt the courts.
Yes.
And even Trump, he even says, my judges will rule in my favor.
Yes.
He's even said
My
that.
judges. My judges.
They're not his judges. They're our judges, the country's judges. It's not his attorney general. It's our attorney general.
How about my generals?
Right,
My generals will
my
do.
generals. And
Yes.
then he curses them out. He tells them they're ignorant and stupid and they have no guts, and they sit there and take it. So I think we're in a perilous time. I think that right now, I don't think he's going to be impeached. So we have the election to get rid. If we don't get, and then we're going to have, and people say this, we may have a crisis if he loses the election because he's going to contend that it was fixed and he's not going to leave office. And after that, if he assumes more power, there's only one other alternative, and that's go to the streets, demonstration, revolution.
Well, you know what's interesting is how many people, how many right-wing nationalists have been empowered by this man.
Oh, yeah.
Which makes perfect sense. We did shows on the NRA. Makes perfect sense to see how many, and it's not all members of the NRA, because the NRA, essentially, we talked about this, was founded for a very noble purpose, having after the Civil War, when the northern soldiers realized, or the generals realized, that people in the North were not trained to handle firearms. So they created this organization so that we would never have that problem again. And instead, it's been turned on its head. And now what the NRA represents is support for Donald Trump. But many members of the NRA do not agree with him, do not agree with what he's doing. But the problem is, how many of these folk have arms and that are prepared to go to war? I mean, there are people with basements full of all kinds of weaponry. And Trump won't leave office. He's not going, if he's voted out, he will not leave peacefully.
The founders, you know, one of the beauties of this country was the peaceful transition of power after election. That's one of the beauties, other than, you know, Lincoln, when, you know, they said, we're leaving if you elect them, which is like, you know, a threat. And there's people that have said the same thing about Trump. I think it was Franklin Graham, but it might have been another evangelical who said, if we don't reelect Trump, there'll be a civil war.
Yes.
So that's a threat, isn't it? You're saying
it is a threat. It is a threat.
So, but part of the foundation of this country, checks and balances, separation of power, a peaceful transition of power from one party to the other, from one group to another.
Yes.
That's the and the foundation is cracking. It's like the infrastructure of this country. Yes. It's cracking, and I mean, I hate to be the naysayer. I'm really frightened for my kids and my grandkids. I mean, I won't be around, you know. And many republics, and I won't say democratic republics, but Rome was a republic.
Yes, it was.
And it morphed into an autocratic dictatorship where the Caesar had all power, and the Senate started to wane in power. So
that's what we're witnessing now.
And the Roman Empire lasted 1,000 years.
Yes.
We only list less than 300, so we're on a and we can stop it, just like climate change, if we choose to. If we choose not to, then it's on us. And
then we are going to be left with something that does not resemble anything that the founding fathers.
I hate to interrupt you, but we have breaking news.
Really?
Yeah, the Republican Party has changed its name from the Grand Old Party. They announced it today. It's a symbol of the Republican Party is no longer going to use the elephant as a symbol, but a condom, because it more accurately reflects the party's beliefs. For example, it allows for inflation, it halts production, it destroys the next generation, it protects a bunch of dicks, and it gives you a sense of security while you're actually being screwed.
On that note, this has been Conversations Across Time. Tune in next week.
Conversations across time. 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 Conversations.
Welcome to Conversations Across Time, the show that allows you, the viewer, to experience imaginary conversations between immortals, historical figures from different time periods. And so, the story begins. I am someone that's always been interested in history. So one of the things that in one of my former incarnations, I was a history teacher. And I thought that history was always taught when the kids could get interested in it and when they could have some understanding of the personalities. So I had this idea, and I was here at Philly Cam, and when I started talking about doing this show, the more people I talked to, the more people it seemed would be interested in the concept. So Babette explained to you that I saw her on a corner because Babette is a former state representative, and I knew that as a person with a feminist background and a progressive background, it would be wonderful to have her discuss things that were going on today, and we could apply it to historical instances.